I decided today to show you two different interview setups, and one of them was done with a gaffer and a full team, and the other one was actually done with me and a couple of assistants, so kind of a smaller crew. I don't know what difference you may or may not see in them, but I just thought it might be an interesting contrast to show the two different setups and what we have here. So the first one was for a documentary, and then the second one was for actually a corporate piece. So I'm going to let you take a look at these, and we'll go from there. All right. Okay, so you can kind of see these two interview things that we're going to be working on today. I've got this one here and this one over here. So we're going to start over here with this one. The first thing I'm going to try and do is just go into the specs, and I'm trying to make this as consistent as I possibly can. So for this one, it was shot with the Arri Amira, shot at 23:9:8, log profile, so flat, as you can see here. 3.2K ProRes 422 HQ. Well, that's a mouthful. Most of the time I shoot on ProRes on the Amira just because it's a little bit easier of a file format. Shooting in RAW is not always necessary, plus RAW is actually 2.8K on the Amira. Not that that's bad, because it's incredible. You can really scale that up. There's a lot of cool information about that. Anyway, and then the Schneider Xenon full frame 50mm lens. Schneider makes really cool lenses. They're in kind of the same ballpark as like the Zeiss CP2, 3, that kind of a range of lens. They're not very expensive in the grand scheme of things, but really cool. The lighting for this was the Amaran 200 XS with a large softbox, which is kind of my go-to lighting for a lot of these interview setups, and then a 501 reflector in the side. So what I want to do is I want to show you first this is kind of the log setup, so you can just kind of see how it's set up. This was filmed in a very large house in Dallas. Again, this is for a documentary. This woman had a beautiful, beautiful home, a lot of space, a lot of room in it. She had this just amazing outfit on. Just everything just was really, really done to the nines as far as her place and in the location. And what I noticed immediately was, and you can even see it here, even flat, you can kind of see this kind of color palette that just kind of it's got a lot of like the similar colors here. Let me change that around. Let's go to, I like this better. See, this color matches with this color. The neutral walls right here, you have the gold accents and the gold clock. The only thing you're going to see, these are tulips that are going to stand out, plus a vase right here. And then you have, of course, the windows out here, which was a big concern for me because I wanted to actually see the windows and I didn't want to drape them over. And I did go back and forth on that idea. Also back here is the fireplace, and there is a little bit of a flame. Obviously in a still frame, it's going to be kind of hard to see those. Moving on, this is the grade that we have on it, and obviously a little bit of a different look than what you saw before. Everything kind of pops now, and everything kind of stands out, and you see a lot more of the detail, a lot more texture. There was a little bit of work done, especially in the windows. So first of all, just the key came from over here, just kind of keyed down onto her. What you want to do in an interview is you can kind of see there's kind of a, the crossing line, right, of contrast. So it's a little bit darker on the side of the face here, more light on this side of the face. Some of it you want to kind of subconsciously, you're using motivation here from the sunlight coming onto her face. So it's like a natural sense of light. But you also want to make sure that you're, paying attention to the environment. When I look in a room, I'm trying to figure out, what's a good setting, what's a good placement for the person. And also you got to be sure that you don't put the person right necessarily, on, say, the couch over here, right? If we were to put her in the couch, she would sink back in, she'd fall down in there, not fall down, she'd sink in the couch, and it would kind of swallow her up. Plus the placement of the couch over here, I mean, you're going to have just this solid wall back here. This actually, I think, is a sculpture that we had to move. That was really scary to move, by the way. So we put her just in a regular chair and kind of more in the middle of the room, because what I really liked was I liked having this fireplace back here. I like having a little bit of gradation of light coming in, so there's a little bit of contrast here behind her. And the same thing. Now you have some more texture, right? Another thing you'll notice is we're kind of shooting into the corner over here. I like the corners that give you some depth. And then also you see that we have the texture of the couch. You have the flowers, which are really popping right there. You have just the darker vase as well. You have this table. The table catches light. I like those kind of things. I like those elements right there. It brings up the elements. The one thing, if I'm criticizing, I'm not too sure now about this chair that's back here. And that may not have been something I could have moved, but then we could have moved her over and we could have gotten rid of that. So, again, you're not always happy with everything that you're doing, but you're trying to be as happy as you can. The other thing is I did want some of the fireplace in there, but I didn't want it to be overbearing so that you were constantly looking at it. There's a hint of flame, there's a hint of fire, and that's all you need. The same with the clock. The clock it wasn't really moving, so something that wasn't really distracting. Again, though, so we have the key light over here shining down on her. And then there was a little bit more contrast than I wanted on her face before I put a reflector over here. And to be honest, I really can't remember. I don't know if I had it silver side or white side. Silver side obviously is going to give you a little bit more punch right here, but sometimes the white is a little bit softer, but maybe not always enough. And again, for the interview, we didn't want it to be dark and brooding. You can see it's a very light and spacious, room, and she's got nice light clothes on, and the story is actually a lighter story as well. It's not a dark and heavy story. A lot of times the lighting is dictated by what your story is, right? If I wanted this to be kind of a murder mystery thing, then I would want to make sure that this right here was a lot darker, a lot more contrast. I probably wouldn't even have the window in there. I'd have to, I'd probably knock that out completely, and maybe try and bring down the entire ambient light in the room, because that's something that you just are not going to want, if you're telling that dark story. Same thing with something that's kind of a comedy. You might even want less contrast on here if you want something that's more, what they call high key lighting. So maybe bring the light in up here a little bit more, and then just, flatten it out a little bit. Don't really like that. The other thing you have to be careful of is, this woman. She obviously is not a young woman, and you want to give her as flattering a light as you possibly can. So again, nice soft source, nice big lighting. That's going to soften the face. It's going to soften the features. It's going to make her look a little bit nicer. And I mean, she's beautiful. But and again, I just can't get over this outfit. I just really love, how that looks. It's a really great outfit that she has on. So again, those are kind of the elements that I was thinking of. And the one last thing was just this touch of the tulips. She had those tulips in the house. I don't think they were actually placed right there to begin with. I did want something that was totally distracting. And again, we're shooting really shallow here. We're probably shooting at T2.2 on this thing. So it's about as wide open as those lenses go. But just that little pop of color, I think, just adds a little bit of dimension and a little bit of interest in the overall scene. So anyway, we're going to move on to the next one now. So this is the second setup, and this was done for a corporate video. And you can kind of see, just a much different setting that we have here. This was done. We had a larger crew on this one. We had a gaffer, we had a grip truck, we had kind of all the toys on this one. We had to still do several different interviews throughout the day, so it wasn't like we had forever to work on these kind of things. And there was definitely some challenges, which I'll talk about in here. To go into it, we'll go talk about the specs real quick. So the specs on this one is we shot with Blackmagic Ursa Mini Pro 4.6K. I don't have that camera anymore, but it was a really great camera. Shot it at 23:9:8 UHD log profile. The Zeiss Milvus 50mm lens, cinematted. Lighting, as far as I can tell, is a light matte 2x2 with the egg crate diffusion. We had an aperture with the barn doors, just those little aperture, kind of little punchy lights. We had a quasar tube in the back for a hair light, and then we had another 5-in-1 reflector that we used just for a little bit of fill on the side, which is kind of my go-to, my preference. So I'm going to show you the setups that we had first. Might be kind of fun to take a look at these. Let me zoom in a little bit. And so what you can see is here's obviously the camera, the Ursa Mini Pro. Not a lot of space back here, as you can see. Here's the interview chair. You see that it's in the middle of the room. Once again, I like to shoot something that isn't up against a wall. I don't want to, just because there's a couch over here doesn't mean I want her sitting on the couch, because then she's going to be on the wall. And the same thing with it just gives you more depth, more ability. We don't have a whole lot of space. We kind of ran out of it there, and it was a little bit difficult to actually operate the camera from back here. But that's, it's really for the shot. That's what you want it for. We had these. There's, these are windows right here, and they had their own kind of drapery that came down to cover that up. This is that aperture light I was talking about, which I'll reference in the next picture. And then here's the controller for the light mat, which is right over here up above. So then the next image here will kind of give you a little bit more of the lay of the land. So again, the interview chair right there, you got the microphone booming right over there. And then, just our setup. Here's the interviewer seat. So the person doing the interview is going to sit right there, right on the camera practically. And then you can see here's the light mat, 2x2, going right over, shining right down, really nice kind of setup that way. And then this is the aperture light, and it's just giving us this streak of light right here in the background. Just a little bit of accent, a little bit of something to kind of touch things up. This is the quasar back here. I believe that we had it boomed across on I think there's a stand right there. So anyway, so that just gave us a nice backlight. The other issue that we had was, you can see there's glass right here. There's a doorway, another doorway, and then more glass back there with another room. And then in between is this hallway, and in the hallway we had some can light that we could not get the lights turned off. So we actually had to cover some of these cans and get these lights to stop, shining, because we were getting reflections over here. We were getting lots of issues with that. And that's of course another issue is you're shooting. You can see the camera is shooting this way across. That will help minimize your reflections on the glass. If we were to shoot from here straight on, then you're going to start getting some issues with that. Anyway, so let's go over to the picture, and then we'll talk a little bit more about how all these elements came together. Anyway, in the end, you can kind of see the setup was looked pretty nice. The one thing that I was grateful for was that this woman was wearing this red vest. The red, I just love the color. It looks great, especially when you have a really neutral background. So you have, this neutral couch, you've got neutral, walls over here, neutral here. The same with this painting. Everything's kind of neutral and not a whole lot of color. So for her to have the color, she really, really pops, which looks really great. Then the same with since the light mat is boomed over, it's a little bit closer to her, and just coming down from above instead of from the sides. And that gives you this nice cast of light going right across her face right there, which looks really, really pretty, I think. Now, again, we've got the reflector on the side. That gives you a little bit of fill right there. Again, don't forget, there is still kind of that contrast, right? You're trying to use half the face. You want a little bit more contrast over here. Nice lighting right on this side. And then from up above, you've got a hair light right here, which is that quasar light. That's shining down. That's giving us a little bit of glow right there and a little bit of edge as well. And that kind of just gives her a little bit of a pop right there, separates her from the background. And you can see there's a lot of detail in the background, so there's a lot to work with. We've got some reflections. We have these lights back here. This is the other conference room. We went back and forth and decided that we wanted to leave the lights on, because if we didn't, it was going to go really dark. We'd have to pop it anyway. And we may have actually put a little bit of ambient light in there with another small light. But these lights are just kind of nice little accents, and they're not really in the way. I mean, I'm not always a huge fan of having stuff right on top of someone's head. I would have liked to have these over here instead, but again, you don't always have that option. So the other elements that we were looking at was that we added this light here, this kind of slash. I don't do slashes a whole lot, and they can be a little bit hokey, but the one thing about it was it just needed something. This wall was just really, really flat otherwise. And the same with just this couch. Not that I'm trying to, draw your attention necessarily to it, but I really wanted to kind of raise that up. Kind of the nice thing though is like we were using the angle here to kind of match with the angles coming off of the glass window panes right there. So I really like to use kind of geometry in my shots. I really like the way that those kind of look, and it just kind of gives you a nice pleasing aesthetic. So in the end, that's how we put it all together. So I'm just trying to show the contrast between different setups and different lighting, and also to show that you honestly don't need a whole lot of lighting to make something look good and look dramatic, because I think a lot of times people overlight things. They spend so much time on these little elements that really are not that important. It's really about who's the subject, what's the subject, where's the subject placed in the scene, how does the scene relate to the person. All those kind of things help tell your story. And sometimes if you overlight things, your attention starts getting drawn to that instead of the fact that you're trying to tell a story. Do you want to light it nicely? Yes, absolutely. You always do. You want to make them look as good as you can. But at the same time, you don't need to spend forever and days. And not everything's going to be perfect, especially in this kind of a situation. If you're on a movie, it's a different situation. You should be able to have control over every little element of it, and everything that's shown is something that you want to have on screen. If you're doing documentary or even corporate, because corporate you just don't always have a whole lot of time, you kind of have to be happy with not totally perfect. You have to be willing to accept that there's some things that you're just not going to be able to change, or you don't have the time or the ability to take, to make changes of. And that's okay. You got to just learn to relax, take it easy, and in the end, make sure that you're getting something that the client at least is happy with and that there's no distractions. So that's it for this one. I will look forward to talking to you guys on the next one. Appreciate it. Thanks. Goodbye.